Hey guys, so today we have Jamie, and she's going to share her story. And just like what I always tell patients all the time, you go to a doctor, they spend like 10 minutes with you, and push you off into whatever they want you to do, whether it's surgery or do this. And a lot of times it doesn't work because you got to spend more than like 10 minutes with someone to kind of figure out kind of what's going on. And that's sort of the experience that Jamie's had, even though this doctor is fantastic. I mean, if I had a foot issue, this is the doctor that I would actually go to. But, for surgery and things like that. But a lot of times we don't really need surgeries and things. So Jamie, tell us a little bit about like your foot pain, how long you've had it, what you tried, all that good stuff.
Sure. So it started a little bit before December, before I went home to visit my folks for the holidays, and it was ball of foot pain on my right foot. Um, and it really bothered me running. And I thought at the time maybe I just needed a more substantial shoe because I had run in kind of a minimalist shoe and it didn't have a lot of padding in it. And of course, I'm getting older. So I didn't do much running when I was home visiting my parents. I did go to the gym and I did more weights and I did elliptical and that kind of thing. And I wore a more substantial shoe. When I came back from the holidays, I started to get back into running a little bit more because I was starting to train for a half Ironman that I was signed up for in June. And so I was really going to start kind of ramping training up with my coach at that time. And I was still having some ball of foot pain. So I talked to one of my girlfriends, and at the time, I know that my feet are not structurally normal. I have bunions. I was a dancer for, fourth grade up through the end of high school. And I've been running now since I was 30. So, my feet have taken a beating. And I know that my feet aren't structurally sound. So I assumed that the best course of action would be to go to an orthopedic foot specialist, which is what I did, because I thought maybe it was my foot structure that was the issue and that maybe I needed to have something more done. So when I went to see this foot doctor, he did an x-ray, spent about 10 minutes with me and basically just diagnosed me with metatarsal G and said, oh, as you age, the padding on your feet wears out and it's just inflammation from that. So you need to go see one of my guys to have custom orthopedic footwear made, or orthotics inserts for your shoes, and just to unload the second metatarsal, and that should get everything resolved. So I called and made an appointment. I couldn't get in to see the orthotics guy for like a month. So it took a month to go in. And he basically kind of just looked at the script from the doctor, and he had me stand on this basically piece of paper to kind of get the model of my foot. And then he created these orthotics inserts, and he said, gradually up your volume using them, and it should help things out right away. Well, I immediately noticed when I put them in my shoes, I started by just trying to walk around with them, that it was really hard and it was really quite aggressive of a bump. So I tried running with them a couple of times and it was just absolutely miserable. So finally I got back in to see him and I said, look, these are not working out for me. They're creating, I think, more of an issue. They're more painful with them than running without them. So he shaved them down a little bit, kind of watched me run in them and sent me on my way. So I still was having issues trying to run in them. And at most I could run maybe 40 minutes before I would get massive blisters. And it was just creating more issues. And that's sort of when, I don't know what prompted me to, but I was sort of in my last ditch effort. And by this point we were in March and I was starting to get stressed out because I knew I needed to get my volume of running up to be able to get, fit enough to be able to complete the run portion of the half Ironman. So that's when, just on a lark one day, I think over the weekend, I Facebook messaged you, and I had come to you before for my hamstring issues. And to be quite honest, when my foot issue started, it didn't even occur to me, because I know how I have so many structural issues with my feet. I was like, of course I should go to an orthopedic foot doctor to see what I can do. From this point forward, any issue I have, I'm pretty much going to call you first and come in there, because it probably would have saved me a lot of time, money, and issues in the long run, because I do think that the orthotics caused more harm than good.
Oh yeah. And I know, like, so you go to a doctor and they image you, and literally it's like, okay, I have foot pain. That's what metatarsalalgia is. That's what it is. I have foot pain. Great. But why? Like, why all of a sudden do you have this foot pain? Like, you haven't had this foot pain up until this point. So you've got to think of like what's changed that has created some of those issues. And so that's where, like, I was like, well, we've got to get into the why. Like, why is this happening? And then when you came in, I'm like, this doesn't move. Like, never seen anything like this before. But if you go in and you understand the body, and you're like, okay, we've got to see, like, how's the ankle moving? How are the foot joints, moving? How's all, structurally, how is it moving? If it's moving fine, then you go into, okay, so now how are you recruiting some of these muscles? Is there something that you're doing and you're running? Because it's so repetitive that if you are doing something and you're running, that we've got to address that piece of it. But honestly, the first step was just, it wasn't moving. Like, your joint literally wasn't moving. And your foot, like, joint, it was like the foot, that bone was like stuck up. And so when you had that orthotic, all it was doing was pushing it up farther, giving you even more problems. But that just, I mean, I always tell people you can't get that in a 10-minute conversation with a doctor.
No, and that's about what it was. And even afterwards, I was thinking, okay, well, it's because I'm aging, but surely I'm running the same on both feet. So
Yeah.
One foot is aging more rapidly than the other foot.
Yeah. And honestly, it drives me bananas, because that's what the doctors say, is like, oh, it's because you're getting older, and that's just what happens as you get older. I'm like, no, like, why all of a sudden? Doesn't make sense. And our body honestly has an amazing ability to heal if we give it the right environment and understand it. And so a lot of things, aren't necessarily age related. Yeah, our age, we slow down a little bit. We don't recover as fast, and we have to adapt in how we do things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do some of the things that we love to do.
Absolutely.
So what were some of your fears if this didn't get taken care of?
Well, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to run anymore. And I mean, I know, to people that aren't necessarily active, they're like, okay, so you couldn't run anymore. But I mean, my working out and training is a big part of making me feel less stressed as an individual. So, and it's also my social outlet, because a lot of my friends are triathletes, and a lot of my social time is spent riding my bike and running with friends.
Yeah.
Instead of going out to dinner, we go for a run together.
Yeah.
So
totally get that.
Yeah. And so to not be able to do that, and also it had been so long since I had raced. I mean, a big thing was this race had been pushed off for 3 years. So the first time that I deferred it was because of my hamstring. And we were working through that. And I didn't want to, of course, the race was in Hawaii. So it's a big investment to travel there, to ship my bike there. And so I wanted to be able to complete it and do well by my own personal standards, which means being able to get through the race and execute. And then, of course, it got delayed 2 more times because of COVID. So I wanted to make sure that if I was going to go there and race, that I could actually
do it,
not be out there for 8 hours on the course and be walking the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest fear. And of course, I wanted to be able to do it and not make it worse, because I didn't want to have long-term implications from it.
Yeah. And I know you came in. So we got everything resolved. I mean, fairly quickly. I was telling her like, if this is what I think it is, then this literally could be 2-3 visits for you to be able to finish this thing and run it. And that's essentially kind of what happened.
Absolutely. Well, and I also like the fact that you have given me some foot exercises to do and some suggestions on how to keep the muscles from tightening up now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And I knew
Keep everything
it,
flexible.
yeah, it might be a little bit of a work in progress over time. And that's kind of, I mean, with my hip, I did the exercises and, strengthened it back up after we got it loosened up. And I mean, knock on wood,
Yep.
that has been phenomenal.
Yeah. And that was I knew that, man, hips like what you have take a lot longer to get that resolution. But with the foot and what we found, those are just, what you happen to have was something that was going to be much quicker. So, which is thankfully, because I think we only had a month and a half before the race.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I was able to, first of all, I got rid of those damn orthotics and wasn't like, and thankfully, I will say the orthotics guy was nice. He gave me a refund if I returned them. So that worked out because they weren't cheap. But yeah, I mean, almost instantly I had relief and I was able to run. Now, not fully pain-free. I still had tightness afterwards, but I was able to run. I was able to complete the distances and the times. And so, and gradually it just kind of got to the point where I wasn't feeling my foot. I mean, in the beginning, I could feel the pain basically the entire run. And the entire time I would be thinking, how much time do I have left? How much time do I have left? And it was all
which
foot
is not
related,
fun. Yeah.
which is not no. And it's like, oh God, I've only completed 10 minutes and I still have an hour left to do. But ultimately that went away. So that's great. And now after the race, I had some soreness and some tightness, which I expected that I would.
Yeah, I would expect it too.
And I've been kind of building back up. So of course I had so much fun racing that I signed up for another late season half Ironman, and I have an Olympic distance race that's coming up the end of July. But I have started gradually to build back up my mileage again.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what would you tell someone that's on the fence about coming in?
I would say absolutely do it, because I think you and your team are phenomenal. And I also think you're very trustworthy. So if you think that there's something more going on that you can't help someone, I feel like you would refer them to a professional. But truly from now on, my first stop is going to be with y'all, because I feel like you'll get to the problem and come up with a solution. And if you can't help, you'll be able to direct me to the right place to go.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we have so many people now that, they'll come in as like, we are the orthopedic doctor to go in and assess them. And we have parents that will bring their kids in, and there's times we're like, yep, think you need to, let's move you on to the doctor, but at least we can help guide them through the process and give them questions to ask. And then they can even talk to us afterwards to like, okay, what did the doctor say? And then we can really spend the time with people, because our healthcare system, there's like no time. Like no one can spend time with you to explain like why and is this right? Does this make sense? And that's really kind of what we want to be for people. Yeah. Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your story, because I know it's gonna like really resonate with other people out there, because people will be like, oh my God, that sounds just like me. And they'll kind of like know that this is the place that I need to come in, and they'll have hope that they can get better. Because I mean, honestly, people lose hope. They lose hope that they're going to be able to get better, that this is going to do them in and they're never going to be active again, and they aren't going to be able to do the things they enjoy. Everyone goes through those same fears. So
absolutely.
Really excited that you're able to share your story.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to.